Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Eva Melton Show. I'm Eva Melton, and I'm excited tonight to meet all of you who are on YouTube and Facebook with a guest, Danna Perdue-Melton. And tonight she's going to share about her book, her counseling and consulting services, and how her work around intergenerational trauma impacts both her book as well as her life's purpose. Danna, how are you tonight?
I'm doing awesome. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me on tonight. I look forward to this conversation. I want to tell everybody that's listening, you're going to learn something new because I learned something new from reading her book. You're going to laugh, but you're going to also hear about this jewel that we have here in the greater Birmingham area that is blessing lives and helping people find their way and their path to healing and wholeness. And so, Danna, I want to ask you a question.
Okay, I'm
Give
ready.
me three words that describe you.
Three words that describe me. I'm dependable. I'm delightful. And I'm dedicated. Totally dedicated to the cause.
Awesome. And so, in your own words, let everybody know who you are.
So, who am I? That's a great question, Eva. You know, um, again, my name is Danna Perdue-Melton. I was born and raised here in Birmingham, Alabama, and I really went through like a lot of things throughout my life, as you know, the book will tell you. Um, and ended up being a counselor. Who knew, right? I did not see that coming. And so I'm a counselor here in the Birmingham area, and with the teletherapy is across Birmingham because I get to see a lot of people. And so I'm a LPC, so I'm a licensed professional counselor as well as a play therapist. So I work with very young children, and I'm endorsed as an infant and family specialist as well. And so, I have over 20 years experience working with like women and children. Started out in the preschool, right? My first job was a preschool teacher, hence the nursery, in Angel in the nursery. And so, that's just a little bit about my professional background. But at heart, I'm a child of the Most High God, and I am who He says I am. And so early in my life, He spoke to me and told me I was an intercessor, and I was like, I'm like in my 20s. I'm like, an intercessor, what is that? Like I literally had to look that up. And so that's a prayer warrior. And so he gave me some words, be at every prayer meeting. And I was like, I'm 20 some years old, be at the prayer meeting. But I was obedient, right? So I was obedient at every, like, overnight prayer meeting. We will pray all night, right? And I would be on the altar, one eye open, one eye closed, and praying. And my oldest daughter, Trinity, would be on the back pew, sleep, and so just that's a side of me. And lastly, I would say I'm that seasoned woman, in Titus 2:3, right? So and that's also in my book. I just wished I had a woman that understood me and that could guide me with all the things that I had been through. And so um ended up being that person, that woman for many young women who were in a similar situation, me, single mom trying to raise my daughter. So those are, some things. That's who I am.
That's beautiful. See, I've already learned something new about you already. That background about intercessors is something that I did not know about. So that makes me very excited. I love your book. I want to just start off and say that I love your book. I found it very encouraging. And the conversation around intergenerational trauma is one that is always needful in our community. But before we get to your book, I want to talk to you about your life's purpose. If you had somebody was to say, or we know this to be true, that Danna was created with purpose in mind. Danna was created with purpose in mind. What would you say your purpose is?
Okay. So I would say my purpose is in the words of young Jesus, I'm about my father's business, right? And what that looks like for me is helping people to heal and to be whole. And that looks different every day. That may be holding space for a person that hadn't had the chance to just actually just feel or go through maybe the trauma that they experience. It may be helping a mom and her child, have a good relationship, right? And so just ultimately, helping people to grow socially and emotionally, because um, we have these relationships that we don't know about, or we may have these wounds. Some people have wounds that they either don't know is there, or can't really pinpoint, like, I'm feeling some kind of way, but they can't really get that feeling out. So what are you feeling? And so I think that that's my life purpose, is to help people heal and to be whole.
Love it, love it, love it. One of the things I wanted to say I loved about your book was that you're very transparent, and it did not come across as a fussing type of conversation. I feel like your book was a conversation. Like, I felt like you invited us to join you, like, in telling your story and how this change came about in your life. And so I just want you to talk about a little bit. You talk about that you didn't really have that woman, that seasoned woman that understood you to kind of guide you along. And that now you're kind of holding that position to help other young women, including your daughter and others, even your clients. But I want you to talk about what was the turning point for you when you say, hey, I didn't have this and I saw a lot of this growing up. What
Right.
made the change for Dana?
So what made the change for Dana was that Dana had got pregnant. um and I wasn't married. And so, a lot of people deal with things differently, but realistically, when we're talking about something like that, there's a lot of shame involved in that. And so it was just like, my business was put out there on the street publicly. It's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And then just realizing that I was messed up, and how was I going to raise this child? Because I went through a lot. As I have several ACEs. The first time I saw the ACE screener, I was livid. And I wanted to. I was at a conference, and I just wanted to bust out and start crying because I had so many. Um, and so, it was the realization that, okay, I have this child. How am I going to raise the child? And I said in the book, like, I needed raising myself at that point. And so that was the game changer for me. And I think that, but God knew what I needed, right? He knew what I needed, because I didn't have it in me for me. But when I got pregnant with Trinity, I had it in me for her, right? It was just like something just really kicked in. And because I was praying before I even like knew what I was doing, before he told me I was an intercessor. And so, what came with that was like, Lord, and I had to be transparent. It was the cat was out of the bed by that time, right? So, Lord, I've kind of messed up here, but I know that you love me anyway, and I know that you're there, and I need your help raising this child. And I think that was the turning point, because he met me right where I was at that time.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Being met right where you are.
Yes.
Even the position that had found yourself in, being met and being able to go to God transparent, transparently and to lean into God in that moment in your life. That's beautiful. And so I want to do this for those who may be listening. First, I want to ask you guys to go ahead and share this stream because Dana is sharing some information tonight. The women in your life need to hear. The children in your life need to hear. But if you're a woman out there right now today, you're struggling, you feel like you don't have that older seasoned woman that understands you or is even trying to understand you or can offer some wisdom to you. I just want you to hear Dana's story. Now, Dana, you said an acronym, ACE, ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I first heard about Adverse Childhood Experiences. One of my church members had me to join I want to say it was a Zoom in the middle of the pandemic that YWCA was doing at the time. And that is where I learned about adverse childhood experiences. And it made me go look it up. And so I ended up buying the book. I think they were covering that day, The Deepest Well. And so that was Danny Mars. And that has just caused me as a pastor to read and to understand more. You know, a lot of times you can know some things happen in our childhood, but now you're getting to the point where you can kind of count these different variables that put
Mhm.
kids in a certain space. And so if you could talk about what an ACE is.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So again, ACE stands for adverse childhood experience. And so it's those stressful experiences or trauma that we have before the age of 18. And this can happen at a very early age. A lot of times we think that if trauma happens early, or if and we don't even consider kids stressed, right? But ACE can happen even at young babies, young children. And so it's that stress that happens early, or trauma that could be witnessing domestic violence, or being a victim of domestic violence, any type of physical violence, sexual violence, divorce, right? Divorce is considered a ACE. This is a event that caused enough stress on that child to kind of just change their whole dynamic, how they see themselves, how they see the world. Some other ACEs, incarceration. If you had a loved one that was jailed, that is considered an ACE. So you had a primary figure in your life and it just been taken away from you. And so that's considered a ACE. And so a lot of our households actually have quite a few of these experiences that happen. And again, they change so many things very early on. If you have so many, it can change actually the brain chemistry in children, very young children. Um, and so, we have to, and if untreated, it can lead to maladaptive behavior, right? So things like our coping. So that's how our teenagers get into like smoking, because they're trying to cope. We call it in the counseling field self medication, right? So they're self medicating these issues that they're having. So that's where we get into the vaping, the smoking, the using of drugs, because these they're trying to cope by the time that they're teenagers. But that self-medication can also be overeating, right? Some people can even use sex as a coping mechanism, right? And so, when we start these habits of coping in maladaptive ways, and it can also lead to early death, right? Because it leads to risky behavior, unprotected sex, and things of that nature. And so, we have to be very careful. They even have like a chart that'll show you, like, if you have so many, and like, your life expectancy. And a lot of people just don't know and understand that this is serious.
It is serious. It is serious. And we have one listener, someone that's on the live stream, Raphael Bay, who says that this sounds to him like it's closely related to PTSD. I don't know if there's any correlation or similar symptoms.
Right.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody that's listening, if you want to chime in or if you have questions for Dana before we shift into her books, feel free to post them in the chat or you can share this stream with a friend. If you're on YouTube, just go ahead and text it to somebody, because she's dropping knowledge tonight that our community needs to hear and to understand. The more we hear, the more we know, the more we can observe, the more we see symptoms, and the more we're able to put ourselves in a position to help somebody. So, Dana, your book, I have it in my hand.
Okay.
Angel in the Nursery, Destiny Fulfilled. Angel in the Nursery, Destiny Fulfilled. I want to talk to you just a little bit because I loved your level of transparency in the book. I want to reiterate that. I love your level of transparency. And I believe when we're transparent, especially for the women who are following behind us, that
Right.
we're more likely to be able to help them because they know that we have experienced something and we're just not talking from theory. This book was published in 2021, and I want to know what was looming in your life that promoted this level of transparency, and what made you feel that this book was ready to be released in 2021.
Oh, yeah. So I actually wrote the book in 2018. And I was going through evil. Oh my goodness gracious. I was going through in my personal life. I was going through in my professional life. I had experienced some racial trauma and ended up not working for 8 months. Um, and so I had the time on my hands. Don't like idle time, and just prayed again to seek God, like, okay, so this is the time. And being a intercessor, God does this thing where he kind of just like downloads. Just like I was like, oh my goodness, and I have to like get it on paper. And it's just like an urgency to just write it down. um and so I was actually going through a lot during that time when I actually wrote the book. And so of course I got back on my feet and start working, and just kind of put it to the side. It wasn't quite time to release it yet. So um when I started the publishing process actually during COVID. So, it was kind of just it was like it's time. And I was like, doing COVID? Like, seriously? So I started that process, because it took a year to get it published, right? That whole process is it seems very easy, but it's a very long process. And so some things were happening because Perdue Counseling also started during the pandemic. So I was able to release the book and start Perdue Counseling during COVID. So, and then it came out in 2021. So, initially, yeah, I was very transparent, because I was going through some very heavy things during that time.
Awesome. I love to hear how, number one, I hear you saying you got to download as an intercessor from God. You started work, but then you waited on the season.
Right.
You still waited to release it, and releasing that in 2020, well, in the middle of the pandemic, and then also launching your company in the middle of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, that's beautiful and that's brave. That's courageous. So I applaud you for that. I want you to do this for us. Do you have a favorite passage in the book? And if so, do you mind reading it and sharing some of your words with our listeners?
Sure, yeah. So my favorite passage comes from the chapter "The Angel in the Nursery," and it reads, "I also encountered an angel in the nursery at my church. I will never forget that day. It was the day I gave my life to the Lord. I can remember feeling nervous and uneasy. I was worried about my daughter Trinity. I had experienced so many horrible things and wanted to provide Trinity with a better life, but I knew I didn't know how. I was in desperate need of guidance, and I prayed to God. I prayed that God would help me as I tried to raise my daughter on my own. One day, as I entered the nursery at my church, one of the workers approached me as I brought Trinity into the nursery. She said, "You don't have to worry about Trinity." In that moment of unbelief and awe, I stood there and looked at the lady. She said that God is going to take care of Trinity's every need. As I began to sob, the lady led me into the salvation prayer, and my life was forever changed. Things weren't always perfect after that moment, but I knew God had heard my cry for help.
That's beautiful.
Right.
That's
That takes
beautiful.
me back. That takes me back to where he met me. He met me there in that place, in that it because it was a dark place. And it's so awesome how God can just meet us there. He just met me on my level, and I thank him for that, because that gift he gave to me, that's what I do. I meet people every day on their level.
I love you. I love that. That is so touching, but I love that part of your story because for me, it's a testament that one moment can just shift everything.
Right.
One moment can shift everything and change the trajectory of our life. And that's why I'm so encouraging of people to not give up,
Right.
but to keep pushing despite what, may seem rivers that seem impassable.
Hmm.
Not to give up. That's some lyrics from a gospel song, but to never
Right.
give up. So I think your story, and I just want to say to everybody that's listening, if you know a single mom in your life, I highly suggest this book. And so, Dana, I want to stop right here. I want to talk a little bit about when I read about your counseling and consulting company. It says that you established it to help individuals, children, and families develop healthy relationships and heal from intergenerational trauma. That word, we can, hear it and know what it means, but do you have anything specific that you want to say? That's what's coming to mind for you right now when I say the words intergenerational trauma.
So what comes to mind is relationships, right? We have a tendency to have an expectation about how relationships should be, and more than likely it's inaccurate. And I don't think that we realize how important those early relationships affect our later relationships. Like, if you didn't have a good relationship with your mom or dad, that's gonna affect your family dynamics of like who you date, who you marry, what your family dynamic is going to look like. And so, really working on kind of um, what has started early in transforming forming that, even early on. I work with mothers, even with their very young children. A lot of times, especially single mothers, there's probably some depression there, because there's stress from having to carry the load all by themselves. Again, there may be some shame there, um, and so that depression can be transferred to that baby, right? A lot of people don't know that, like, infants can be depressed. And it'll come out later on as a behavior we'll see, and we're not really sure, because we go first thing what we're gonna say, they bad, right? We're gonna label them, when in actuality it may be a different something different going on with that child. So really just honing in on these relationships, and trying to have a better relationship, with your children, with your family. And because that's how it's passed. That's how the trauma is passed, through the relationship. A lot of people don't know that's how the intergenerational trauma is passed. It's through the behaviors, but it's through the behaviors through the relationships.
Wow. Wow. I think, I could listen, and I think all of us are a part of a generation. So I think this conversation could
Mhm.
impact anybody positively. So I hope you guys that are listening are going to share this with your friends. And so, Dana, I want to find out from you exactly how can a person, my brother just walked in and told me goodbye. So what can a person who is looking to get in touch with you, may be interested, number one, in hearing about you as an author, a speaker, and as a counselor, but somebody who wants to just book time to get on your schedule at your company, at your counseling and consulting company, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the best way for them to do that, they can give me a call. And that's 205 675 0529. That's probably the best way. Or they can send me an email. And that's going to be dpmelton at Perdue/counseling.com. They can reach me that way. You know, they can send a message. So I do have a website as well. They can reach me there. But the best way is probably to get directly to me would be to give me a call.
Awesome. So we'll make sure we get all of that information in the caption and on the YouTube channel so that people can reach out to you. So I do have one final question that I want to ask. Well, it won't be my final question, but I have this section in the podcast that I call the well.
Okay.
Well, and it is just to help people. I know that different people have different ways to connect to God. We have different spiritual practices and things that do, like you talked about being an intercessor and laying and being on the altar.
Right.
But how do you stay connected to your source? How do you stay connected to the well?
So I stay connected by early in the morning. I'm up early in the morning in prayer. Um, I'm always seeking to know knowledge. And so my biggest thing is, because I am an intercessor, it's prayer. Lots of quiet time, because you can't hear God if, or you can't get your download if you're always busy. So you have to sit and be quiet, a soft, still voice, right? And so lots of quiet time. So prayer, quiet time, and then I like to spend time outside. I'm a cloud person. Um, if you if you see my Facebook page, you'll always see like these pictures of me being outside, always admiring the clouds and the trees and just the quietness of nature. And so, those three things are what I do to stay connected. I have to have my early morning prayer. I'm up about 4:30 every morning. And I spend at least 30 minutes to an hour doing that. Again, quiet time, right? So I'm just not, praying, but then I'm going to sit, I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to listen. And then spending time in nature is the other thing that I love to do.
Love it. I love it. I love to spend time in nature. It's something I try to do every morning. I try to go sit on my back porch and just listen. And sometimes it just reminds me of, the God who created all of these things that sustain themselves while I was asleep at night.
Right.
That I didn't have to do anything and the sun was still going to shine in the morning. It's just a good reminder for me. But I want to ask you this. This is my true last question.
Okay.
Is there anything, that's coming up for you that you want my listeners to know about you?
Okay. About me. So I think what I would want your listeners to know about me is that I'm authentic, right? I've spent years people pleasing, and they don't have to do that either. There is a place where you can go and be transparent. I'm no longer ashamed, right? I provide a place for people to where you can mess up. It's okay. It's a part of the process, right? We're not gonna get it all right. And that's okay. It's part of the process. Um, and so I create this space for my clients, and so and for people that around. Just you can be your authentic self. We don't have to put on airs. um And I think that comes through really clear in the book. And so if they would need a space like that, that I'm here for them.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And tell us how we can purchase your book.
You can purchase the book. So it's on Amazon. If you go on there, you just put in there Angel in the Nursery, it'll come up. You can also on my website, if you go to my website, you can purchase it as well. And I will send it to you personally. I'll sign it and send it to you personally.
Well, that's what I should have done. I got mine on Amazon.
It's okay. I can see. I'll come meet you and sign it.
You can sign it. Well, I have enjoyed having you on my show tonight. Again, like I said, we'll take this and package it for my podcast, for my radio show, as well as my own personal YouTube channel. We're live right now, everybody, on the Firm Foundation Church Facebook page and YouTube channel. And this conversation will be archived so you can go back and listen to it. And I want to encourage y'all who are listening to this right now, or maybe you're going to listen to it tomorrow or next week. I want you to take this and to share this with a friend. If you get a nugget out of this, which I know everybody can in our community, I want you to take this conversation and share it with your friend and tell them, hey, go to this minute and second mark and listen to what Danna has to say about ACEs or intergenerational trauma or safe spaces or healing and wholeness. But our folks need to hear this message. Danna, I thank you so much for sharing this space with me on tonight. I just love your energy. I love your authenticity. I love your genuineness and how you just show up as who you are. And I am grateful, and I'm just praying that your practice continues to grow in the way that, you know, God has shown you that it needs to grow, and that you just continue to show up as you. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to end the live stream, but I want you to stay on for a few seconds.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.